Good afternoon, dear participants of today our meeting devoted to the University of Farabi. Today we are going to share with you with a presentation devoted to the 1150th anniversary of the medieval Eastern philosopher Abu Nasr al-Farabi. Better known as al-Farabi. It is philosopher, and this year we celebrated his anniversary. So this date is special for Kazakhstan, since a follower of Aristotle and Plato, who had a powerful influence on the development of the philosophical thoughts and of the East and West. He was born in 872, probably in Kazakhstan place, in the territory of Kazakhstan. So let me introduce his biography. This is an introduction of his biography and his life and education, works and contribution, and philosophical thoughts, Aristotle and Plato. So let's talk about his biography. Abu Nasr al-Farabi is widely regarded as founder of philosophy within the Islamic world. Also, he had some noteworthy predecessors such as Al-Kandi and Al-Razi. He was the first philosopher of his epoch to command the unqualified respect of future generations. Avicenna, Averroes, and all considered many of al-Farabi's themes and left written testimony of their admiration for him. He became known as a second teacher, that is, a second only to Aristotle. So little label information about al-Farabi's life has survived. The extant sources all date for at least 3 centuries after his death. He was probably born in what's now Kazakhstan, around 870s, and died in 950s. He spent most of his active career, which was largely devoted to teaching, writing, and his studies. There has been speculation that has always studied and because of his interest in Greek language and thoughts. But this never been verified. He left Baghdad due to political unrest towards the end of his life, and many have died in Damascus. As far as al-Farabi's writings are concerned, we have still discovered less than half of the items listened to medieval. So nevertheless, the surviving work allows us to appreciate his statue as an original philosopher whose accomplishment extend across all fields of thoughts. He wrote enduring works on logic, physics, psychology, and other science, such as music, politics, and others, as well as important commentaries on both Aristotle and Plato. Much of debate concerning al-Farabi today centers around which of the subjects he most esteemed, but they are clearly all important. His writings on politics are the most widely available in English, due to the reliable writings, translations of Muhsin, Mahdi, Charles Butterworth, but some logical and scientific writings have been translated as well. Furthermore, even their ostensibly political works contain passages that shed light on his metaphysics and more rarely on his logic. It's difficult for the students who approaches Al-Farabi for the first time to know where to begin. Writings in his major works offers a good introduction to his characteristic themes, which are reiterated often, but never from exactly the same angle. To understand him, however, one must read each work several times. Let us make a brief survey of the bulk of the major works available in English. The political regime and virtual city both begin with accounts of the cosmos, but include with discussion of politics, and sharply distinguish virtues inherent in the interpretation of these two works consist in their ambitious relationship to one another. They follow a similar structure and treat similar themes, but never repeat one another verbatim, and often diverge in their emphasis. For example, the virtuous city presents a rigid cosmic hierarchy and focus largely on semantic descriptions of rules and opinions, while the political regime presents a loose cosmic hierarchy and describes the workings of the governments and in far great detail. So now let's talk about the book of religion. This one, the first one of the chapter, and the book of religion. It displays considerable overlap with the first chapter of the enumeration of science, while the latter concludes with a lengthy explosion on the excesses of theological. The book of religion doesn't mention theory at all. Instead, it gives a deliberately ambitious account of the origin of religion, where establishing this subordination of religion to philosophy and jurisprudence to political science. It articulates a hierarchical view of the cosmos with a strong political emphasis. It concludes by proposing a collaboration between a virtuous Muslim governor and a philosopher in order to replicate such a hierarchy within the human world. So next one is the book of letters. Let me describe this chapter. So the book of letters deals with the question on logic, language and translation. Only the second section of 3 parts work have been translated. It establishes the 5th hierarchy of the arts, with philosophy on top, the arts of the multitude on the bottom, and religious arts such as jurisprudence and theory somewhere in. But it suddenly turns to describe the origin of language among a multitude of each nation, beginning in utter speechlessness, involving through poetry, linguistic science, and culminating in the practice and reflection of philosophy. Al-Farabi then speaks of the promulgation of a religion obedient to this philosophy. He soon acknowledges, however, that such a view of human development made an unrealistic, adding several other scenarios that point to an often tense relationship between philosophy and religion in most nations. And the last one is the final two parts of philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. So the first part is the attainment of happiness, presented in this book named the Book of Mind. So it consists of summaries, interpretation of the various Platonic and Aristotelian works known to Al-Farabi. So a special striking emphasis on dialectic and the thoughts of Plato and Aristotle, and the lack of discussion of Aristotelian metaphysics, so which is merely mentioned. Also, the accounts of the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle seem divergent in both tone and context. So Al-Farabi insists that both thinkers have the same intention and the same philosophy. The attainment of happiness leads and initiates through a brief instruction of the theme of the science, followed by a discussion of virtue, nations, and cities. So Al-Farabi then turns to a discussion as philosophy. It begins his discussion of Plato and Aristotle. Perhaps Al-Farabi hoped to persuade his address that studying Plato and Aristotle is more substantial activity than seeking to mere political ambitions. So let's talk now about, so here you see two pictures, which one of them here presented Plato and Aristotle photo, and another Avicenna. They are great scientists. So they had a great influence on Al-Farabi. So what about works and contribution? Al-Farabi made contribution to the fields of logic, mathematics, music, philosophy, psychology, and education. So here you see his list from his works. And so logic, what about logic? Let's talk about his logic. So he was mainly an Aristotelian logician. He included a number of non-Aristotelian elements in his works. He discussed the topics of future, so the number and relation of the category, so the relation between logic and grammar, and non-Aristotelian forms of inference. So he is also credited with categorizing logic into separate groups. So the first begin idea, and second one is proof. So Al-Farabi also considered the theories of conditional syllogism and analogical inference, which were part of a Stoic tradition of logic rather than Aristotelian. So another addition Al-Farabi made to the Aristotelian tradition was his introduction of the concept of poetic syllogism in the commentary of Aristotelian poetics. So, what about music? So, drawing of a musical instrument. A charmet from Al-Farabi's Kitab Musica al-Kabir. So, named the Book of Music in translation. So Al-Farabi wrote a book on music titled Kitab al-Musica. In this he presents philosophical principles about music, its cosmic qualities, and its influences. So he also wrote a treatise on the meaning of the intellect, which deals with music therapy and discuss the effects of music on the soul. So now let's talk about the psychology of the scientist and his major works. So philosophy. As a philosopher, Al-Farabi was the founder of his own school of early Islamic philosophy, known as Farabism or Al-Farabism, though it was later overshadowed by Avicennism. So Al-Farabi school of philosophy breaks with the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. In this end, it moves from metaphysics to methodology and a move that anticipates modernity. In his attempt to think through a nature of a first cause, Al-Farabi discovers the limits of human knowledges. So Al-Farabi has great influence on science and philosophy as well for several centuries, and was widely considered to second only to Aristotle in knowledge in his time. So his works aimed at synthesis of philosophy and Sufism, so paved the way of the work of Ibn Sina or Avicenna. So let's talk about physics and education. Al-Farabi wrote a commentary of Aristotelian work, and one of the most work named Al-Madina, or where he theorized an idea state is a Plato's The Republic. So Al-Farabi argued the religion truth through symbols and persuasion. And like Plato, so it's the duty of the philosopher and provide guidance to the state. Al-Farabi incorporated the Platonic view and drawing the parallel from within the Islamic context, in that he regarded the idea state to be ruled by the prophet, so instead of the philosophy investigated by Plato. So Al-Farabi argued that the ideal state was the city-state of Medina, when it was governed by the Prophet Muhammad and as its head of state. As he was in direct communication with whose law was revealed to him. And now we'll talk about physics and psychology. So physics, Farabi wrote a short treatise on vacuum, where he thought about the nature of existence of a void. He also may have carried out the first experiments concerning the existence of vacuum, so in which he investigated handle pluggers in water. So his final conclusion was the Earth's volume can expand to fill available space, and he suggested that the concept of a perfect vacuum was incoherent. So it means, and the last one is the description of psychology of the scientist. Wrote social psychology and principles of the opinion of the citizen of a virtual city, which was the first treatise to deal with the social psychology, and he started insulated individual, which could not achieve as the perfection. So in his treatise on the cause of dream, which appears as a chapter 24 of his principles of the opinion of the citizens of the ideal city, he distinguished between dream interpretation and the nature and the causes of dreams. And here see his major works, pictures of his works, such as the political writings and classical Arabic philosophy and medieval political philosophy and others. So one, the perfect state. So one of them, one's a perfect state. Also, you see here presented the Plato's laws and philosophy of Aristotle and Plato, and harmonization of opinion of two sages, Plato and Aristotle. Book of Demonstration and the Book of Letters also, you see, and Book of Religion. So the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle selected aphorism, enumeration and sciences. So this picture, this one is about his original book, you see, and unique handwritten copies you can see here. And the next part, and now we will talk about the Book of Mind, which was devoted to the anniversary of the scientist. So the Book of Mind, here you see this book. It describes the scientist describes here his philosophy, his, for example, happiness, attainment of happiness, logics, mathematics, and other scientists are presented. These sciences presented in this book. So, what about happiness? What about attainment of happiness? So, the Al-Farabi is absolute good in the meaning of the philosopher. So, it's a good that is desired for its own sake, where there is nothing to great achieve. Achieving happiness is the purpose of life, in the opinion of the philosopher. So Al-Farabi makes happiness the reason of being humanity. He expressly states that God created us to achieve happiness. So to Al-Farabi, anything that helps a person achieve happiness is a good perfection. To Al-Farabi, anything that helps a person achieve happiness is good, and anything is abstracts a person who achieving happiness as evil. So happiness is achieved when the soul of the person reach reflection, and in which it needs no material substance to exist. So one need not only comprehend it and be conscious about happiness. So one must also desire happiness and make it the purpose of life. So if one desire for happiness is weak, and one has a different purpose in life, so and now let's talk about the influence of Greek philosophy on the scientist. So the influence of Greek philosophy. So Al-Farabi was greatly influenced by both Plato and Aristotle in his philosophy in general, and in its concept of happiness in particular. So he was also greatly influenced of Islam. So despite the substantial influence of Plato and Aristotle, Al-Farabi generates a unique discussion of happiness. So Al-Farabi's concept of happiness, it's a product of his experience and his understanding of Greek philosophy. His concept of happiness combines Plato's concept of the good. So thus Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia means happiness, and the Islamic concept. So I will discuss each of these influences in details. So Plato's concept is more obscure. So Plato's concept of the good is similar to happiness defined by Aristotle and Al-Farabi. So the God is a source of intelligibility. So Plato discussed the God of the divided line. He believes that highest goal to education is knowledge for the God. So he believed that the highest goal in all of education is knowledge. He argued that just as the sun provides light by means in which are able to perceive everything, and according to Plato, human beings aim at the God, and nobody voluntarily chooses evil. So evil action are the product of lack of insight. He argued that theoretical reason is the highest activity of man and necessity to attain happiness. In this regard, Plato seemed to suggest that the masses are incapable to grasping the truth. And so here you see the chapters such as the attainment of happiness, the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle, and the third one, the book of mind on the meaning of the word mind, and the last one, Al-Farabi, founder of Islamic Neoplatonism. And let's talk about these chapters. According to Plato, human beings aim at the good, and nobody's theoretical reason is the highest activity of man, and a necessity to attain happiness. In this regard, Plato seemed to suggest the masses and incapable of grasping the truth. So this is illustrated in this allegory of the cave, where Plato suggests that masses cannot see the truth directly, but are satisfied as imitation of reality. So to Plato, the God is a source of intelligibility. Similarly to Al-Farabi, happiness is the attempt of intelligibility, and both of them describe their concepts as the goals of life, and both of them include a materialistical entitled from their concept. And now let's talk about the word mind on the meaning of the scientist. So the word mind is used in different senses. The first meaning, idea, and is deployed in common sense when man is perceived as a traditional range. So the second meaning of mind is a permanent point of discussion among multicalism who recognize this in this own way. So the third meaning of the word mind includes an Aristotelian treatise named Proof. So the fourth one is mentioned in the 6 books of Aristotelian Ethics, and the fifth definition of the word is a treatise on the soul. And the last one, the 6th one, is given his metaphysics. So regarding the word mind used by Aristotle in his book, we can say that by this word he means only the quality of the soul, So also a person obtains certain knowledge of universal, true and essential principles on by application of syllogism or reflection, but in innate ability by nature or from his childhood, of the origin of which it is ignorant. So today we talked about the most about philosopher Al-Farabi and about his philosophy and his psychology and the attainment of happiness. We describe this chapter and other chapters. Дорогие подписчики социальных сетей, библиотеки имени Сабита Муканова, сегодня была представлена презентация книги из семитомника «Собрание трудов Аль-Фараби». Книга эта посвящена философским трудам Аль-Фараби, и те истины, которые он закладывал в своих трудах по психологии, философии, логике и другим наукам. Также он уделил внимание теме музыки, религии. Его бесценное наследие передается из поколения в поколение, и оно актуально и в наши дни, и спустя 1000 лет. Спасибо большое за внимание. Thank you for attention and good luck. Thank you.